Exploring the history of NFT traits using data visualization. You have our attention.
Thanks. Thanks for the intro. How's it going, everyone? Oh, I guess I need a clicker to change my slides, don't I?
Here is the clicker.
Yay. So first of all, I want to thank this amazing conference for allowing me to bring my 11-year-old son, who's here, who has an ETH wallet, bought his own CryptoKitty, signed up for a bunch of video game alpha. If you want an early user, talk to that guy, right? There's Gen Z and then whatever gen he is. So I'm super thankful for that opportunity. I think it's amazing that he's here and absorbing all of this. So a little bit about me before I get into it. I absolutely adore NFTs. I guess crypto 2013 with Bitcoin and NFTs early 2021. I belong to a number of different communities as a collector, and I find that that's probably the most enriching thing. So huge shout out to MFR crew, Mutant Cartel crew. I'm on the Hashmask team. It's just been so amazing to be a part of the many ecosystems. I guess from Web 2 side of things, I used to do a lot of graphic design and data viz, and so I brought some of those skills to the space. And one thing I'm really interested in is exploring traits. So I know that we're short on time, so I'll just go through some of that inspiration. When I started working with the Hashmasks, one of the things that I noticed is it had a huge subtrait situation going on. So for instance, how many people here know of NFT traits? Just rarity. There's, if you have a trippy ape or whatever, okay. So you guys know traits. So one of the things I found really interesting about the Hashmasks was that they had this category of masks, but they weren't split down further. And so I took a huge deep dive in exploring some of those subtraits that they had. But then that got me really thinking about what about the rest of the NFTs and NFT projects? So I decided to nerd out a little bit. I couldn't help myself. So I wanted to scrape OpenSea's API, and so I used Python for that. They have an amazing API if you're that nerdy. It's pretty awesome. I was looking for 721 tokens, and I wanted a supply of over 1,000. And I put 0.001 ETH as my total volume criteria because OpenSea really is the OpenSea, and there's a lot out there. So I just wanted to narrow it down a little bit. And for the database, I just used proof of work tokens. I had a previous one that was a little bit smaller, so I just rescraped the data recently. And so what was really interesting is when I did this at first, OpenSea caps your scraping to 55,000 recent collections, and that didn't help me at all for getting a deep dive. So I went browsing, and I found 117 OpenSea accounts that are pretty OG and some that are pretty recent. I wanted a broad range. That amassed to 235,000 tokens in those wallets, and those accounts were created between 2018 and 2022. And so I pulled over 3,000 collections through scraping all those wallets for tokens. And then what was interesting to me is 87% of them had traits. Of course, not all of these are PFPs, and there's some limitations to my data set. Obviously, missing collections, et cetera. Some collections are dynamic, so not all of the tokens have been minted. But let's get to the fun stuff of browsing this. So one of the things that, and I've done this for an NFT NYC, I covered the gold trait. So today we're going to deep dive, not the halo trait. This was just interesting to me because it informs which projects were some of the first to do certain traits. So that to me is kind of interesting. I noticed that obviously the Hashmasks have a halo, and then the halo continues, right? Even the Moonbirds are yep, we're going to include a halo. And that raises questions why are we including certain traits? When are we introducing certain traits, right? And when are we abandoning traits? And that's really interesting to me. So we're going to actually deep dive 3D glasses for my small little talk here. I found them very interesting. I don't know whose punk that is, but that's Nigel, the 3D glasses ape. He's a friend. And so, of course, they're called anaglyph glasses, and this is me going super deep into Wikipedia because the images are really interesting and the history of the 3D glasses are interesting. They're not always just red and blue, right? And different ones have different images that would be made for perceiving them. And this was created in the late 1800s, and I find it really fascinating that the CryptoPunks were the first to, of course, include the 3D glasses, and that trade continued throughout. And one of the questions that I had was, okay, well, how rare are they? And are they rare continuously in every project that gets put out? Or is someone you know what, let's floor the 3D glasses trait? No one's done that, at least not from my data. So in this particular graph, I pulled 766 projects that had the 3D glasses trait. And to do that properly, I had to get creative, like put in 3, put in D, write out the word 3, right? Like thinking about the corporeal language I'd have to use to identify 3D glasses in this mass data set. Because like the goblins came and come on, those traits are nuts, right? So, and Ranga decided that 3D glasses are 2D, like 2.5D, I think, thanks. And then I think it was the Murakami Flowers that actually called 3D glasses the proper term. So anyway, it was a fun deep dive into the data. Anyway, these are proof of work, and I just, out of the projects that I collected in those 766, I pulled the ones that had greater than 10,000 ETH volume. But look at, so the Yuga ecosystem of apes and this like weird project called the Doogies, they're at about like 5%, of the total supply that have 3D glasses. And then you have some other projects that are like Wolf Game, very few 3D glasses tokens. I just find this so interesting that my hypothesis would I'd see at least one project that would be like 20%, but that's not the case. And I can tell you just from looking at all the other traits that I've been looking at that generally, not only do projects copy traits as they create projects, they copy the rarity as well, which I think is really fascinating. And so I also thought, okay, but how about the floor price compared to the trait floor price, right? Like that was really interesting to me too. So I pulled a couple of projects here just to have a look. And the punks, it's like 2.2 times the floor price if you want a 3D glasses punk, right? You can buy at the floor or you can pay 2.2 times more to get that. But that's not the case, for instance, with the apes, right? Like there's a couple that you can get almost at the floor. So I kind of just explored this a little bit as well because I found that super interesting. I thought, to myself, is it consistent? Does the floor behave according to rarity or does it behave according to some different other factors? So I found that this is something that I want to deep dive for a couple more traits as well, because there's definitely a disparity, for instance, in the gold one, right? So some traits are prized more than others in a collection, which I think is interesting, even despite of what the rarity is. And then I went even deeper into this. I'm like, okay, well, let's go into the 3D shades of red and blue here and check it out. And I mean, I have a whole page of this. I just put a few of them up here because I thought it was super interesting to investigate, well, is there any project out there that abandoned the cyan, blue, red situation and 3D glass something else of the other color palettes? Nope. Everyone's stuck with this, and these are the shades. So that was really fascinating as well, because now I'm kind of thinking we're thinking about the future of NFTs and how maybe the history of looking back can impact future. If you're sitting there and you're thinking of a 10K project and you're making traits, come talk to me. There's so many things that you can innovate, but also capture and do a little bit, maybe differently, and maybe keep the same. But it's just interesting to have some kind of consideration rather than just blindly saying, okay, this has been included, therefore I'm including it, and I'm including it, I'm including it. So, and I'm not even fighting that per se. I just think there's room to include and also innovate. But I think one way of doing that is by looking at what has been done already. So my last point that I'm going to make is, of course, I've been working on all of this because as a hobby, pet project, I'm working on a coffee table book because every DGen needs a coffee table book. And so this trait and many, many other traits that are in my data set are all going to be part of a really nice coffee table book that you can then introduce all of your normie friends with by being let me pick up this book and show you some fun traits. So yeah, that should be coming out. It's probably the springtime. I had a data set ready, but then I waited for proof of work to finish because I'm just going to make that volume for proof of work NFTs and make that a complete set. So yeah, I'm Outer Lumen. My DMs are open if you want to get in touch, if you want to deep dive traits. I absolutely love doing this. It's one of my favorite things about the NFT space. And thanks for listening to me. Appreciate it.